Hi, I'm Congresswoman Sewell, and I want to welcome you to a special Juneteenth edition of Terri Talk. I'm so excited to be joined by the president of the Tuscaloosa NAACP, Miss Lisa Young, to discuss the progress made and the road ahead. Exactly 158 years ago, nearly 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, the last remaining slaves were finally freed in Galveston, Texas. Since then, June 19th has served as a day to commemorate the end of slavery and celebrate Black freedom. In June of 2021, I was so proud to join my colleagues in the House and the Senate in voting for the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, legislation which finally established Juneteenth as a federal holiday for the first time in U.S. history. The federal recognition of Juneteenth has been a long time coming, but I'm thrilled that under President Biden's leadership, we finally got it done. While this marks an important and symbolic step in our fight for equality, we here in the Alabama 7th Congressional District know that the price of freedom is not free. While Juneteenth is indeed a celebration, it is also a call to action. After all, we know that there is much work left to do before we as African Americans can fully enjoy the protections and the rights and privileges afforded to all Americans under the Constitution. From housing to healthcare to police accountability, even voting rights, the fight for racial justice continues today. Tragically, across the nation, we are seeing that old battles have become new again. Without the full protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, states have been free to enact laws that restrict voter access for minority voters. As the representative of Alabama's Civil Rights District, I am proud to lead the fight in Congress for voting rights. This year, I will once again introduce the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to restore the full protections of the VRA and ensure that every American has an equal voice in our democracy. In the words of Coretta Scott King, struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Juneteenth is an opportunity for us to recommit ourselves to the work that our foremothers and forefathers took on so bravely, the work of changing America's future. Today we celebrate, and tomorrow we must get back to work. Generations of Black Americans, past, present, and future, are counting on us. Now, I'd like to introduce my special guests. Joining me today is Miss Lisa Young, president of the Tuscaloosa County NAACP. She is a true servant leader and has been on the front lines in the ongoing struggle for full equality for African Americans. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We are so thrilled that you were able to join us. What does Juneteenth mean to you? And can you also share with us the special activities, the call to action that the Tuscaloosa County NAACP had around Juneteenth? What does it mean to you?
Thank you. To me, Juneteenth means a time of reflection and a time of rejoicing. While we reflect on the struggles that we've had as a people, we also want to rejoice some of our accomplishments that we've had.
We've come a long way.
We have, but we need to make sure that we stay on top of things because every day, even in 2023, we're looking at struggles when it comes to representation.
Absolutely. And we understand more than anyone the importance in Alabama of the constant struggle and fight, and also the opportunity to really use it as a call to action. I agree with you that Juneteenth is a moment and a day of celebration, but I really hope that people will become active, call to action as well. Tell us what the Tuscaloosa County NAACP is doing to celebrate Juneteenth.
We've we've partnered with some amazing organizations in Tuscaloosa to have a weekend of celebration on Friday. The West Alabama Multicultural Alliance is hosting a civil rights bus tour, um, and that's geared toward targeted youth. They will visit three churches that were very instrumental, um, or places of significance in the civil rights struggle. That evening, we partnered with the University of Alabama Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to host a genealogy workshop. We
Very
have,
good.
yes, we have renowned Francine Taylor. She's a well-known historian and genealogist, and she's going to give us step-by-step instructions on how to trace our ancestry.
That's amazing.
It is for African Americans. Sometimes the way we trace our ancestry is going to be different because we were enslaved people.
Yes.
So she shows you those unique ways of tracing your ancestry. Um, Moving forward to that Saturday, we're going to have a parade. This year we have three grand marshals. We could not say last year we had Deontay Wilder as the grand marshal.
Yes.
And we were trying to figure out how do you top Deontay Wilder?
Hometown boy, right?
Yes. So we had three names that were submitted, and we felt that all were significant. We have Reverend David Gay Jr. We have Miss Lily Leatherwood, and then we have Dr. Jacqueline Richardson.
Awesome. And they're going to be the grand marshals?
Yes, they're going to be the grand marshals for that parade.
And so we're talking about Friday, June 16th. That's this Friday. And Saturday, all the great activities that you guys are doing. Keep going, because I know you're not done yet.
No. The parade lineup start at 9. The parade commence at 10 a.m. From there, we're moving to Palmore Park, where we're going to have a huge celebration in the park. And Congresswoman, when I tell you huge, last year we expected maybe a couple of hundred. But when we got with para officials, we found out that over 1,000 people came through the park that day. Yes.
That is awesome. And all in commemoration and celebration of Juneteenth. Yes. And the importance of Black freedom, which we all know is freedom is never free.
Never.
We all have to continue this struggle. So that's awesome. So you're expecting a big crowd after the parade at the park.
Yes. And let me add that we have several organizations that are going to be having set up voter registration and voter restoration information and sign up. There'll be people there to talk you through the process. So that's one thing that we're very excited about, making sure that everybody utilizes their voice.
Yes.
Yes. And let me go back and say that Para has been an absolute big supporter of this, giving us the entire park, the entire Palmore Park. There's a kids zone there. We have vendors, we have food trucks, we have live entertainment. There's a splash pad there that they're going to offer the young people for free. We have the men of our local Omega Psi Phi that are going to be on the grill, giving free food to the kids. And that's all that Saturday from 12 to 6.
Awesome. Awesome.
I'm not finished.
I know you're not finished yet, because I know you're doing something on Monday, the actual federal holiday.
On Monday, June 19th, we will host our second Living Legend luncheon. Awesome. This year, we will be honoring Mrs. Willie Mae Wells. A lot of people don't know about Bloody Tuesday that happened here in Tuscaloosa. But Miss Willie Mae Wells was one of those people that was attacked by the police and the angry mob as they tried to peacefully protest against segregated fountains, water fountains at our local courthouse. So we will be honoring her, and I'm just so excited.
That is so great. And we got to get out the stories. So many people think of John Lewis, and yes, he was a freedom fighter, but there were so many foot soldiers, known and unknown. And what a great way on Juneteenth for Tuscaloosa to celebrate one of its own, and also give credence to what happened on Bloody Tuesday. We always talk about Bloody Sunday and Selma, and Bloody Tuesday in Tuscaloosa was a real event, and it was something that also helped spur us on to getting the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Yes. And it takes very brave people to put themselves in harm's way. And we just want to make sure that we're identifying and honoring those individuals that were brave to not only lend their voice, but also they were active in the struggle. They were the ones that were putting themselves on the front lines.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they were. What can we learn from those brave freedom fighters on whose shoulders we all stand? What do you think the lessons of the past that we've learned? What do you think those lessons are?
When we talk about African Americans being resilient, we have to go back and look at those struggles. Had it not been for those foot soldiers, we would not be where we are today.
That's exactly right. Say that again.
And we have to build off of their bravery, because this fight has not ended. When you see people trying to pass legislation that reduces representation for African Americans or disenfranchising groups of African Americans, that lets you know that we have a real struggle on our hand, and we have foot soldiers that we can learn from as we move forward.
And what's interesting is that these foot soldiers, we in Alabama take for granted, sometimes because, we don't have to look far to find people who made sacrifices so that the freedoms that we all enjoy could actually occur. I mean, they were our neighbors. They are currently our teachers and our principals and Sunday school teachers and coaches. And, we forget to really honor those that are among us, that are in our midst, that participated in the struggle. And if we've learned anything, it's that progress is elusive, and every generation has to fight to hold on to the progress that we've already made and try to advance it. Yes. And that is why I think celebrating Juneteenth is so important. First, our kids need to understand the history. The fact that 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, it was then that slaves in Galveston, Texas, found out that they were free, but they had been freed 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And you think about that, and what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it just goes to show, like you said, our resilience, but also it goes to show that if we are not taking our freedom seriously, nobody else will. That They will use it as an opportunity to hold us back. If we're not aggressive in asserting our rights, our privileges, and making sure that future generations do the same.
We have to make sure that we tell those stories from the past, because young people take a lot for granted.
Yes, they do.
They think that when they go outside, the freedoms that they enjoy, they don't realize the sacrifices that were made so that they could enjoy those freedoms. And what they really need to understand is you have a fight to fight as well. You have a part in this struggle. So
preach. Absolutely.
As we pass this torch to you, you need to understand where you came from so you'll know where you're going.
Absolutely. So when we talk to our young people, what do you say to really get their attention with respect to the civil rights and the voting rights movement and the history of slavery? You know, we live in a world where Florida is trying to ban, the state of Florida is trying to ban books, ban the teaching of Black history. And this makes Juneteenth all the more important, does it not?
Yes, yes. Young people take a lot for granted. I had to explain to my grandkids why our yearly vacation to Florida will not happen this year. We'll be in
We
the Gulf.
boycotting. We boycotting.
We're boycotting Florida, but we will be in the Gulf of Alabama.
Yes.
But I had to explain to them what was going on, and some of the books that they have the freedom to go into the library and check out, people in Florida do not have anymore. They're removing books from shelves. They're trying to erase our history.
Our history.
Our history. And that's why celebrating Juneteenth in such a grand fashion is important, because not only are we celebrating our history, but what we're asking all races to come and learn about Black culture, Black contributions.
Absolutely.
They need to understand that they have a part in this fight as well. Equality for all means equality for everyone, regardless of race, color, religion, sexual orientation. We have to be very vigilant and let people know that we need every voice. It can't be just Black voices. We need allies in this struggle. So as they learn about us and our culture, the more we empower them, to lend their voice to our struggle.
That's I couldn't have said it better. You're absolutely right. And all Americans need to learn history. And it's not just his story. It's her story. It's our story. It is, this country is made up of a beautiful tapestry of diversity.
Yes.
And we all played a role in getting this country here. We're in search of a more perfect union. We don't have it yet, but it takes all of us working together to get us there. You know, we recently celebrated this great decision, the Milligan decision that came out last week regarding the Voting Rights Act. It was truly jubilant, as you so rightly are clapping, that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We thought that they were going to further gut it. But in the Milligan case, they ruled that the state of Alabama's state legislature has to redraw the congressional districts in order to make not one, but two majority-minority districts.
Yes.
I never would have thought 58 years since Bloody Sunday that the cause for which John Lewis was bludgeoned on a bridge, John and Reverend Reese and Amelia Boynton Robinson and so many others were bludgeoned on a bridge for the right of all Americans to have an equal voice in our democracy. And 58 years later, here we are trying to hold on to the Voting Rights Act. They gutted it in Shelby. In fact, the NAACP, the Shelby County NAACP, as I understand it, is hosting a Shelby Summit, and that's going to be June 23rd through Friday, June 23rd through Sunday, June 25th. Yes. And once again, now you know we in the NAACP, y'all know how to put on a celebration. You don't do just one day. 3 days of celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Shelby decision. We're not celebrating it. We are commemorating it. The Shelby decision, because we're celebrating that during this commemoration, we have had a victory in the Supreme Court with the Milligan decision. I can't tell you how important that decision is. We have known that Alabama has a significant African American population. In fact, 27%. We are 27% of the voting age population in this state. And yet I have the only seat in Congress. There are 7 seats and only one is a majority minority district. And while I am honored every day to represent the 7th congressional district, you know, and I know that I need help.
You need help.
And
we finna get you some help.
Is on the way. And I am so excited about it. Now we need to make sure that the state legislature does the right thing. Yes. I believe, given the very small margins that the Republicans have in the House of Representatives, that they're going to be fighting for every seat. And they may use this as an opportunity to dilute my district, yes, and to dilute the opportunity district, as state legislatures are calling it. We want it to be majority minority districts, and districts where we can choose our own representatives and not have our representatives chosen by the state legislature, which is exactly what happens when we don't have an equal voice in our democracy. And so I know, and you know, that was a hard fought battle. And who would have ever thought that the Chief Justice would join with the liberal justices and Justice Kavanaugh. Yeah. Hello. But when you are right, when, we have been taught that God sits on the throne and he looks down on us and he makes sure that his people at the end of the day get the justice they deserve. And so this is a historic win, not just for Black voters in Alabama, but we know that Mississippi has even more African Americans, 32% of the voting age in Mississippi. South Carolina has even bigger population, Louisiana. And so what we are doing in Alabama, everybody's watching. And we've got to make sure we're watching the state legislature so that they're doing what they need to do. What are your thoughts about this historic win, and especially on the eve of Juneteenth?
When breaking news came across my phone, I was at work, and I can remember standing up, going, "Breaking news, guys! Breaking news!" And I'm just texting because we're looking at lawsuits actually here in Tuscaloosa.
Yes,
and we were watching what the Supreme Court would do. But when I saw that Judge Roberts and Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh,
and Thomas and Kavanaugh,
When I saw
Judge Roberts, and Judge Justice Kavanaugh, they ruled with Ketanji. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I was there for the oral argument. And when I tell you it was the first oral argument that we had an African-American woman sitting on the Supreme Court. Yes. And when I tell you she went to school on people regarding the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, talking about its original intent, talking about the people who put it together and when I tell you she was brilliant, she was brilliant. And the fact that I believe that the court was swayed by that argument, and having her sit at the decision-making table, I believe was a godsend.
That's why diversity matters.
Yes.
We wanted to celebrate, but now, just as you said, we're very cautious to wait to see what those lines will look like. We want to make sure with those 2 congressional districts that your district stays strong, and that, like you said, we have a majority minority district where the voters get to choose who their representative is. So we have our eye on this, but I don't think people in Alabama realized we just set a precedent for those other states.
We did. And not just on congressional maps. Like you said, it's going to affect how the lines are drawn for wards in, city council elections, for county commission elections, for state legislature.
Yes.
I mean, this is a historic decision that can have transformative impact.
And that's what we wanted. That's what we were hoping for. But I must say, I was so surprised because I did not think in a million years that it would happen.
Yeah.
I just said, I know what the Supreme Court is gonna do. We have that conservative Supreme Court. I know what the Supreme Court is gonna do. So this here has renewed our momentum. I'm like, hey guys, let's pull out those fair maps that we drew for our city.
Yes.
And maybe now we can go back to the drawing table and say, hey guys, look, do you really want this lawsuit?
Hello.
Do you want this lawsuit? So with the Supreme Court setting this precedent, it may make the fight just a tad bit easier. And negotiations.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll have more people willing to come to the table and say, hey, you guys help us draw these maps. And you can always be hopeful.
Yes.
You can always be hopeful.
This renewed faith, really.
Yes.
For so many of us, I thought that the decision was going to be a 5-4 decision the other way.
The other way. Yeah.
Because I thought that the Supreme Court would take this case as an opportunity to further gut the Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
And instead, they ruled, they followed the law. They followed that law.
Yes.
And so that is a victory for all of us. But like you said, we must not take our foot off the gas.
Nope.
We have to realize that we got to keep moving on, because the next step is, like you said, to make sure that they do follow the court's ruling, that the state of Alabama follows the court's ruling. And I know that the NAACP is on the case. And
yes, we are.
We have a strong state NAACP and amazing county NAACPs, of which you are the president of the Tuscaloosa NAACP. For Tuscaloosa County.
Yeah.
Tell me, how long have you been involved in the NAACP? And tell me what is the challenges that you face as president of that county.
I've been involved with the NAACP for over 10 years. I've just was reelected to a second term as the Tuscaloosa NAACP president. Our biggest challenge for our county is getting people to the polls.
Yes. Turnout. We got to know that people fought and died. I mean, people prayed, they marched, some people died.
They died.
That we all have a right as Americans to vote.
Yes.
And our access to the ballot box is under threat.
Yes.
And the Voting Rights Act, there's no federal oversight anymore. The states can do whatever they want to do. And that is why this Milligan decision is just so miraculous and so important. Because here's the Supreme Court telling the state of Alabama, you did it wrong, get it right. Getting it right means equal voice, and you cannot dilute the power of the African-American vote in Alabama anymore.
And we want, what I hope that this Supreme Court ruling does is renew those individuals that have given up hope.
Yes.
And perhaps getting more people to the polls. When we preach, your vote is your voice.
Yes.
There is no such thing as a small election.
That's
when
right.
we get complaints about judges, I tell them they were elected or they were appointed by someone that was elected.
You're right.
You have an opportunity to remove them. But to encourage people to run for a position, they need to know that the voters are out there behind them. Yes. Elections are expensive. So,
but representation matters.
Representation matters. It does. When people don't vote, they literally leave themselves open for someone to come in and do as they please.
Yeah.
Our constitutional rights are not to be trampled on.
That's right. That's right.
So getting people to the polls is our biggest, that's the biggest issue that we have in Tuscaloosa.
Yep.
Inspiring people to get to the polls. When I tell people, don't just go to the polls, take someone with you.
Absolutely.
My 98-year-old grandmother, who's upstairs, still votes.
Amen.
She still
I bet you she appreciates it more than your grandchildren and your children.
And she votes. She has to be taken to the poll, and she votes her ballot.
Absolutely.
So if that can inspire, if somebody almost 100 years old.
That is, first of all, what a blessing to have your grandmother. I hope you are loving up on her every day.
Every moment.
Yes.
But she's seen struggles that our eyes could not imagine. The fact that she, who is pretty much, she's not able to walk unassisted. The fact that she demands to go to the polls to cast her ballot should let everyone know.
Absentee, she has to go to the polls.
She's going to the polls. She's not doing the absentee ballot because she's like, I don't know what they're gonna do with it when they get it. So she's an inspiration.
Yes.
And I hope that everybody realizes, or I can inspire somebody that hasn't voted to go vote.
Absolutely. And to bring it full circle, I know that Friday, June 16th, you guys have a kickoff and doing some amazing things. And they got the parade and the park on Saturday, June 17th. And of course, on June 19th, you are honoring foot soldiers of the movement.
Yes.
Making sure, because, Juneteenth is about knowing our history, celebrating our history, and realizing, as you said earlier, that if we don't tell other races, other people about our history, if we don't first know it ourselves and then tell it to others, they can erase our history. And that's why I was so excited to sign on to the bill to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. I mean, we have Independence Day, 4th of July. But when you think about it, Juneteenth is our Independence Day.
That's right? Ours.
And even though the Emancipation was passed by Lincoln 2 years before Juneteenth, we still celebrate the last among us who found out about it, right?
Yes.
And I just want to give you a salute to you as president and to the Tuscaloosa NAACP for having a series of really good activities. I mean, I wish I could be there with the genealogist to trace my history. And of course, I know y'all gonna be throwing down on the grill in the park. And I assume colorful outfits and on our children in the parade. And we have much to celebrate as Black people.
Yes.
We have much to celebrate. And if we don't celebrate it, nobody else will.
No one else will.
Yeah. And also, I think that it's important to remember that we have so much to lose if we don't continue this majestic march towards a more perfect union.
Yes. Yes. Perfectly said.
So closing remarks. June 16th, Friday, June 16th, Saturday, June 17th, and Monday, June 19th.
Yes.
I want to see your face in the place in Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
Celebrating, commemorating, honoring Juneteenth.
Yes. Thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Well, you're welcome. It is an honor and a pleasure. And I just, whatever I can do to uplift. And I also wanted to just give another shout out about the Milligan case. I'm going to host as the ranking member of the subcommittee on elections in the United States House of Representatives. I'm having a roundtable discussion on Wednesday, June 28th, 9 to 12:30 at the 16th Street Baptist Church to commemorate and remember the Shelby decision. We're going to have experts, NAACP, Legal Defense Fund will be there. We will have experts, the lawyers, the stakeholders, and actual activists on the ground in Alabama to talk first in a roundtable about the impact of the Shelby decision. And then afterwards, a second panel will be about now what? Milligan decision and beyond. And so we have to remember to that educating ourselves and our families and our people is something that we have to always do. And I know that the 10th commemoration for, or anniversary commemoration for Shelby is being, the Shelby County NAACP is also doing a summit called the Shelby Summit.
Yes.
And it will be a 3-day commemoration full of really interesting panels, bringing it home that it's, as you said, your vote determines everything. It determines a women's reproductive rights. It determines your sexual identity. It determines so much. And if we're not at the table, we're on the menu, and we can still afford to be on the menu. So I want to thank you so much, Ms. Young, for your work and the Tuscaloosa NAACP for their work. And I want all of our listening audience to know we must tell our children the importance of Juneteenth. And then not just tell our children, but tell our community and tell others who may not look like us why it's important to celebrate African American independence,
yes,
and freedom, which was done on Juneteenth.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time, and to everyone, enjoy Juneteenth.
Thank you.